Cool, are we recording? We're recording. Alright, okay. Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Darren, and in today's video, I got some notes ahead of me, and I want to talk about how Blizzard is forcing Master Looter for raids in BFA. Now, I'm somebody who started out as primarily PvP channel. I would do only PvP content. Raids kind of bored me. It felt like when I'm playing versus players, it's more engaging. I'm not going against a boss with specific set of mechanics that are also predictable, where add-ons tell you exactly what's going to be happening and what you should be doing. So I felt like PvP has been the type of gameplay that I would enjoy. But in Legion, it kind of got turned around. It felt like the PvP was getting more Legion, but the rest of the content from Mythic Plus to raids has been exceptional. So I've been really getting into more PvE as of recent. I probably should have covered this when it was fresh, but let's talk a little bit about Master Looter forced in raid runs. So what is Master Looter, and how are they changing it to personal loot instead of Master Loot? And that's really the big one. Blizzard is forcing everybody to run personal loot instead of Master Looter, where one person will take a look at the loot that the boss has and redistribute out the loot. Why is this a good thing? Why is it a bad thing? Or if it's a good thing or even a bad thing to be forced to have personal loot? The change is, as explained, is to prevent split runs. And split runs is something the top 1% of guilds does when they raid. What's a split run? So the guild splits into half. One of the half players come on their main characters, and the other half they come on their alts. And you funnel all of the gear into your mains. And then you go again, where the alts now on their mains, and the mains are on the alts. So now you can funnel all the gear on the mains. With 20 people in a mythic raid, if you have half of them getting all the gear and the other half getting no gear, then the mains are getting geared out faster. And then when you do that again, so the other half of mains are getting geared out, that means the whole main group is now geared the hell out to tackle the content and maybe get through it faster. Now, this is something that maybe 1% of all raiders, or even top raiders, so it's probably less than 1%, that were using this kind of system in order to gear up faster to tackle the raids, mythic raids, and get world first ahead of everybody else. So in a way, this change is meant to correct for 1%. This change is in a way meant for that 1%, but also Blizzard explained it, it is also meant to prevent negative social interactions. And some people describe it as a removal of all social interactions. Now let's first talk about what is personal loot. Is it good? Is it bad? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of Master Loot versus personal loot? Because a lot of people were really onto this. Personal loot means you down the boss and you get a piece of gear, or you don't get a piece of gear. The gear is RNG to every single player in the game. While in a Master Loot, you down the boss and you get 5 or 4 or even 6 in some cases of pieces of gear that are guaranteed that you'll have at least 4 or 5 or 6, but not always are you going to get a piece of gear. And even if a gear that you need drops, if somebody else needs it more than you, or if the loot master decides that they want it or someone else wants it, they have all the control in who gets that piece of gear. So there are some advantages and disadvantages. Personal loot removes any kind of favoritism. So let's say if the guild leader has a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a best buddy or whatever, or just wants the gear for themselves, they don't just get to give themselves the gear or give it to whoever they want to. So that would be one of the negative social interactions that personal loot would remove. You don't really have that favoritism of just giving your gear to buddies, even if those guys didn't even do that much on the boss, and if you tried harder than them on a boss and you didn't get a piece of loot, of course you would be unhappy. Also, this is supposed to remove the ability to ninja loot. Let's say you have somebody puts up a raid together, and it's a guild leader and he's looking for pieces for himself, and he realizes that he's going in greedy in this, and he is the leader, but he does nothing for it. He just put the group together, he got the healers together, and everybody is running along. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have been in situations like this if you've ever pugged. Usually the leader will have no gear, but somehow they put a group together of people that just simply want to get the content done. Maybe it's a day before the reset, like how we see on EU. And maybe a piece of gear that drops, and he just takes it. He just can take whatever he wants. So it's supposed to prevent ninja looting. Although ninja looting is something that hasn't really been prevalent since, like, not even Wrath, like BC, if not vanilla. Don't they have like services where you can just put in a ticket so that Ninja Looter loses a piece of gear and your group gets it or something? Or is that not only a thing? I just don't really see a lot of ninja looting happening. So those are the benefits of personal loot. There's also some negative aspects to it, like the idea that you can't gear out a group as easily. For example, let's say you get a piece of gear that in personal, let's say you get a piece of gear that drops for you, but then you guys decide as a guild that, hey, maybe this other guy, this Joe, needs it more than you because he simply just had the worst luck with gear. So giving him a piece of gear to get like a 20 item level upgrade is better than you having a 5 item level upgrade. But because of the way personal loot works, it just wouldn't allow you to trade him a piece of gear. You just won't be able to. Personal loot also comes in with RNG. So if you are a fan of RNG and you play through Legion without any complaints of RNG, then you're probably gonna love this kind of system. Compared to Master Loot, where you have at least 4 or 5 pieces that are guaranteed to drop, whether you get them or not. In Personal Loot, everybody could get a piece of gear, nobody could get a piece of gear, and anything in between. It's all RNG, so it could have swings, but generally Personal Loot should, statistically, which doesn't mean every single time, drop you more pieces of gear. Master Loot, however, is a little bit different. It allows you to focus where gear goes to. Let's say Joe is not doing that well, giving him a piece of gear can advance the whole group. A healer that's struggling on heals, gearing him out and helping him gear a little bit better allows the group to get through parts that are healer heavy. Funneling some gear to a tank early on allows him to take a lot more damage into the fights and then gear out everybody else when it's not a DPS check anymore. But when it's a DPS check, now you're trying to give everybody who's low DPS gear to up them. So you can focus kind of where the group content and the group effort goes to. You also allows people an incentive to attend to raids, as in, hey, if you guys want to come to raids, and if you want to get pieces of gear, you need to come to raids, you need to show up. With personal loot, you just show up, whether you do it every single day or whether you do it every other day, you can just show up and you have a chance to get gear. If you say you're in a guild and they're trying to get you trialed out and get you to go, and if you're somebody who shows up every single day, you probably build up a relationship with them where they're fine giving you pieces of loot because you're always there. But when you have, let's say, Jack, I'm just picking out all the names, let's say Jill, let's just mix it up. It's 2018, guys, come on. Jill decides, you know, today I just don't feel like going. I don't have anything to do. I don't have anything keeping me busy. I just don't feel like going. But next week I will, and the week after that I won't. Next week I will, next week I won't. So with Jill being flaky, why would anybody want to give her gear? Wouldn't you want to give it to gear to the people that are showing up every day? So it people allows them to have social interactions where they can incentivize to attend raids and stick through the whole thing. It also allows for player interaction with the bad and the good. You have the feelings of, oh man, the resentment of not getting the loot you wanted, but somebody else got it. Giving loot to others in altruism to help them get better. It's, again, player interaction is basically there with Master Loot. Without it, a lot less. There's a lot less of what a person can do in terms of how they control the situation. There's a lot less of a say. You just either get loot or not, and then it's up to the game mechanics whether you can even pass the loot. So you're seeing the two sides of the coin. You have the personal loot, which has RNG and takes out a little bit of that personal human interaction, and then you have the master loot, which has a lot of human interaction but has a potential for some negative possibilities. I'm pretty sure some of you guys have been in situations where there's a toxic guild or a toxic group that thinks they are a clique and they're above others. Maybe that group is the kind of group that has a guild leader who is just an asshole and a bunch of officers who are just his cronies, and you are a bunch of raiders are trying to carry this guy, this dude, this scumlord to the gear, to the raid, and then once it's over, once you guys have done the heavy lifting, they just trade out and pass out the gear to all of his officer buddies, and then you guys get the scraps, whatever that nobody else needs. Some people have been in those kind of situations, and that would suck. So those players would really love personal loot system. It will allow them to get the gear well if they put in the effort for it. If they put in the time, into the raid, they can have a guarantee or at least a chance, a solid chance for gear, rather than have the gear leader hog it all to themselves. So if we did have implementation of personal loot, overall, TLDR, what are the problems and what are the positives of this? Well, let me start with the problems first and then give you the positives, because usually people will end up seeing the positives at the very end of the tunnel, but maybe the negatives will be enough of a hurdle for you to say, no, let's not do that. Problems with this is more RNG on gear. We all don't like RNG. I think a lot of us have played through Legion and RNG, so why would we want gear RNG throttle to come into play? when you can have guaranteed pieces of gear in Master Loot in a good functional guild, not in a guild full of assholes, but in a good functional guild. You also will have lack of interaction. Like, some people would hang gear over people's heads in order to get them to go, get them to try, get them to really push themselves and contribute to the team. And when you have people contributing to the team as much as you are, then it feels very rewarding. Then it feels really, really good. But with the personal loot, somebody can just squeeze by. They could squeak by. They could barely try, and they still can get loot. I don't think that that on its own can reinforce a lot of good habits when it comes to trying to get better at the game and doing better in PvE. You want to have situations where Jimmy just decides, hey, I'm just going to flake out on you guys, and then 3 weeks later attend raid, and then get showered with gear because he had really, really good RNG. Imagine you trying to go into the raid over and over and over, trying your hardest. Jimmy came in, died in every single pull, and he got literally gear rained on him. What's Jimmy going to do in the end of it? Jimmy didn't earn it, so a lot of people are saying that we should eliminate that as much as possible. Also, on top of it, getting higher item level pieces of gear with bad stats that you might not want. Blizzard is trying to adjust the whole item level thing in BFA, trying to make it a little bit better, so that item level means that the gear is an upgrade for you, but probably making the primary stats a little bit stronger. But let's say you are in BFA that works like Legion in terms of gear. You get a piece of gear and it's just not the stats you need. It doesn't benefit you at all. It doesn't help you. And you would love to give it to somebody else who actually needs it, but because that piece of gear is 5 item levels above you, you can't. You are stuck with this piece of gear that's just going to take space in your bags and could have benefited somebody, but now it can't. So that sucks. So then the only way to trade items is you would have to keep that piece of loot until the next week. You have to keep that piece of loot that is a higher item level by 5. So in case next week that same piece of gear with same item level or lower drops for you, then you can trade it. That means people have to keep junk pieces of gear in their bags in order to actually trade their gear, which I think is ridiculous. So what are the possible positives out of this? Now that I gave you the negative, let me lay down for you the positives. Well, the loot council, if you do have a guild with a loot council, won't be able to get gear away from you. You don't have the loot council holding on to it. You have an RNG holding on to it, but it's not a bunch of people, whether they're nice and fair or unfriendly and selfish. Those people won't be able to hold gear away from you, no matter the circumstance. Technically, with personal loot, you on average get more loot per raid run than you would with master. That's on average. That's not a guarantee average. If you're somebody who's a new player and let's say they want to put you on a trial where they don't really give you gear until you have raided with them for a while, you no longer have that trial period. You could literally trial with somebody and get pieces of gear. So as a new player trying to prove yourself in the guild, you won't really have that proving moment anymore. You can just go in and there's a good chance that you might get a piece of gear and it might be something useful even if it's your literally first run with them. I guess we should really ask ourselves the question, are toxic guilds too much? Are they really rampant for this change to make a difference? Is this change something that's worth doing even though it really applies for the 1% of players and not for the 99% of the players? That's what a lot of people are trying to figure out. I personally think the idea of personal loot, after being in a guild that's been pretty fair on gear, I feel like a lot of people will gravitate away from a bad guild. I don't know a lot of people that will stick with a guild full of idiots if they have the ability to perform and do better. I feel like forming long, meaningful relationships is a lot more important than just getting yourself free gear. If you're somebody who loves the lone wolf playstyle, then I think you will enjoy this kind of loot here. If you're somebody who is in a guild full of toxic people, then you're somebody who probably loves this idea. If you're somebody who simply just wants to, your everyday Joe, just wants to log on, wants to join a raid, and not have a bunch of idiots who are telling you how to play your class, and telling you to get better at your class, you just want your pieces of gear, then I think this system of personal loot will actually work better for you. I feel like this system, I don't really know if it's better or not. If it means more gear, then I guess that's good, but I don't like the fact that it takes out that human interaction. I know the World of Warcraft has been moving away and further away from vanilla, but I do like that human interaction though. I do like the idea of earning gear. I do like the idea of proving yourself, but I really don't know. I'm really on the fence with this one. I don't know if I like this change, if it's going to happen. I don't know how I feel about this change. I can definitely see the positives of personal loot. and allow a lot of your average people to get more gear without having some kind of a hurdle of other people ninja looting from you or toxic behavior or whatever. But I feel like this should be an option. This should still, I feel like, be an option. I feel like Master Looter is fine. And it should be available for, let's say, mythic guilds, people that are in mythic. But everything below that, heroic, normal, and whatever, I feel like it's fine to put a personal loot system on that. So if somebody is gearing out for mythic, then I think this is where the gloves come off, and this is where the big boys come to play, and this is where they should still use Master Loot system, because I don't think any toxic guild is going to get into mythic. You're going to have so many people with your toxic behavior discouraged and demotivated from wanting to even step into a mythic raid that it's just not going to happen. But for guilds that are usually attributing this toxic behavior, probably people that are super on top of their head, on top of the high horse, in the normal and heroic, where this is probably most likely to happen, I feel like their personal loot system is not a bad idea. But I guess I would want to hear you guys' thoughts down below. Let me know in the comments below what are your thoughts on the system. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Would you want personal loot to be a baseline, or do you think there should still be options, or always Master Loot? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below your experiences and all that. I'd like to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see all of you in another video.